Alright, this video is about geometric sequences. Alright, so we've moved from arithmetic, which was adding and subtracting, to geometric. The only difference between the two is geometric, now you're multiplying or dividing by a fixed number. Alright, so geometric sequence, list of numbers where each new term is found by taking the last term and multiplying or dividing by a fixed number. Like, here's two examples. We have 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. What are we doing between each term? Hopefully you said multiplying by 2, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking the last term, multiplying it by 2 to get the new term. So the next term here would be 64, because 32 times 2 is 64. Alright, now here we have 32, 8, 2, 1/2. What are we doing there? Well, you could either say we're dividing by 4, or we're multiplying by 1/4. Either answer is correct. Alright. Now, that number you're multiplying by is called your common ratio, or R. Alright, so your common ratio is the fixed number we multiply by each time. To find the ratio, you pick any term and you divide it by the term before it. Alright, so here's an example. We have 3/5, 2/5, 4/15, 8/45. So now, how are we going to find the common ratio? Well, you pick a term. I picked 4/15 divided by 2/5. Alright, so this will give us our ratio. Well, you know, dividing by a fraction, you can take the fraction and flip it out. So 2/5 becomes 5/2. That'll go to a 3, that'll go to a 1, that'll go to a 1, that'll go to a 2. So 2/3 is what we're multiplying by each time to get the next term. And that's what you would do to the 8/45. You'd multiply it by 2/3 and you'd get your next term. Alright, so common ratio, you pick a term, divide it by the term before it. Alright. Alright, now let's say we have a geometric sequence and we want to find the 12th term. Alright, well, here's your formula. A sub n is the term you're looking for. You're going to take your first term times your ratio raised to the number of term you're looking for minus 1. Alright, let's look at this example. First, we need to find our common ratio. So 12 divided by 6 is 2. So we know our common ratio is 2. Alright, so now a sub 12 equals our first term, which is 3, times our ratio, which is 2, times 12 minus 1. Alright, so this is 3 times 2 raised to the 11th. Punch this in your calculator. Our 12th term should be 6,144. Alright, so as you can see, the formulas are a little different than arithmetic sequences and series, but it's kind of along the same lines. Alright. So now let's look at another example here. Fill in the blanks of the geometric sequence. Alright, so we have blank 16 blank blank 128/15. So now, how are we going to figure out what our common ratio is, because we don't have the number before it? Alright, but we do know this, that if we took 16, alright, and multiplied it by our ratio, we'd get to that term. If we multiplied it by our ratio again, we'd get that term. And if we multiplied by our ratio again, we would get 128/125. Alright, so we know that 16 times r cubed, because we have 3 r's here, so 16 times r cubed, we know that's going to have to equal 128/125. Alright, so now what we can do is we can solve for r. We'll divide off 16. So r cubed equals 128/16 divided by 16, which comes up to 8/125. Alright, because this is 16/1, so you'd flip it out. This would be times 1/16. Alright, this would go to a 1. This would go to an 8. Because 16 times 8 is 128. Now we have r cubed is 8 over 125. Now what we're going to do is take the cubed root of both numbers. All right, because the cubed root cancels out the cube. So r equals the cubed root of 8 over 125. And just like you would do with the square root, you'd square root the top and square root the bottom. You do the same thing with the cubed root. You cubed root the top. So the cubed root of 8 is 2. The cubed root of 125 is 5. So we know our ratio is 2/5. Okay, we know our ratio is 2/5. So now we can fill in these numbers rather easily. All right. Remember, when you go this way, since we're multiplying, you would multiply by 2/5. But when you go back, we're going to divide by 2/5, which is the same thing as multiplying by 5/2. All right. So when you go backwards here, you're going to have to multiply by 1 over r. All right. So I trust that you can do that math. So pause the video right now. See if you can fill in those 3 blanks. All right, so 16, because remember, when you go back, we're going to multiply by 1 over r. So we're multiplying by 5/2. 16 times 5/2 is 40. And then 16 times 2/5 is 32 over 5 times 2/5 again is 64 over 25. So those are your 3 numbers. All right. Now, here's the formula, because the last formula I gave you, you were using your first term. All right. What happens if you need to find a number and you don't have your first term? All right. So what you're going to do is a sub m, which m is the number of term you're looking for. All right. So if you look at the previous example, or the 2 previous examples, all right. Well, let's just make an example. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. All right. Say I want the 14th term. But in this case, say I don't know what's before here, but I know that the 2 is a sub 3. All right. So I know the 2 is the 3rd term. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our new formula. So we're looking for the 14th term. So a sub 14 is going to equal a sub n. N is the number of term you're using. So we're going to use the 3rd term. So a sub 3 is 2 times our ratio. Well, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so our ratio is 2. Now m, all right, m is the number of term we're looking for. So that's 14 minus n, the number of term we're using, which is 3. All right, so a sub 14 equals 2 times 2 raised to the 11th. All right, raised to the 11th. So 2 raised to the 11th. So this is going to be 2 times 2048. It's an 8. Or 4096. All right. So again, this is your formula when you don't have the first term. All right. A sub m, m is the number of term you're looking for. So in our example, a sub 14 equals a sub n. N is the number of term you're going to use. In our case, we used the 3rd term, so it was 2. A sub 3 was 2. Times r, which is the ratio, which you can find by taking one number and dividing it by the previous number. So that was 2. And then m, again, is 14. N was 3 because we used the 3rd term. And then you just simply do the math, plug into your calculator. All right? So this has been your geometric sequences video. Feel free to watch this as many times as you need to. Make sure when you come to class tomorrow, you're ready to work on some problems. See you tomorrow.